Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for what is, well, it's arguably the most electrifying story in global sport right now.
Oh, without a doubt.
We're talking about the seismic, generation-defining tennis rivalry between Carlos Alcaraz, the 22-year-old Spanish Dynamo, and Jannik Sinner, the 24-year-old Italian Iceman.
It's a spectacular rivalry that has completely reset the men's tennis landscape in a way we haven't seen since, the early days of Federer and Nadal.
Exactly.
The sources we've gathered today, from deep analytical dives to insider coaching notes, they paint a picture of parity and brilliance that is, it's genuinely shocking.
So our mission is pretty clear then. We're cutting through the headlines to really get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we want to understand the tactical, the psychological, and the statistical foundation of this duopoly. How did these two become the unstoppable force and the immovable object of 2025?
And splitting all 4 Grand Slam titles for a second consecutive year, which is just incredible.
And what does this total lockdown actually mean for the future of the tour?
It's history in real time, isn't it? Alcaraz now sits on 6 career majors, and Sinner has 4. That's 10 Grand Slams captured by 2 players barely into their early 20s. To put that into context for you, when Rafa Nadal won his first 6 majors, he was already 23.
Right.
Almost a year older than Carlos is right now. They are setting a blistering pace.
They absolutely are. But before we even get into the trophies and the match history, we have to start with the one detail that really truly defines the depth of this rivalry.
Okay.
It's the kind of nugget that, it only appears when analysts crunch every single number. It's the ultimate wait, what factor.
I know exactly where you're going with this. The sources highlighted this phenomenal statistical symmetry after the ATP finals. Tell us about the points played.
Right. So a journalist named Bastien Fauchon did the arithmetic on their entire head-to-head record.
Yeah.
Across their whole careers.
Which is now, 16 official meetings?
16 official meetings. And in those 16 matches, they have contested a monumental total of 3,302 points.
Okay, so 3,302 points. That's a huge sample size. Contested over several years on clay, on grass, on hard courts, in really high-stakes matches.
Exactly.
So what's the split?
Across those 3,302 contested points,
Yeah.
both players have won exactly 1,651 points.
Stop. That's almost an absurd level of statistical balance.
Isn't it?
If you tried to create a rivalry in a computer simulation, you couldn't engineer that level of perfection.
We really couldn't.
It means that across all those hundreds of games and dozens of sets, the net result of every single winner, every forced error, every double fault is perfectly tied.
It truly is the defining characteristic of their competition. Think about the physical and mental demands of sustaining that level of pressure. Every single time they face each other, the probability of who wins the next point is precisely 50-50. It's a literal coin flip that has lasted for 16 matches.
But the sources tell us the overall head-to-head isn't 8-8, is it?
No, it's not.
Alcaraz leads 10-6 overall, and he was 4-2 up in the 2025 finals alone.
Exactly. And this is where the deeper analysis comes in, If the points are tied, why does Alcaraz have a 4-match lead?
Right.
It means the victories are decided not by continuous dominance, but by execution at the most critical moments, the clutch factor.
So we're looking at who performs better on break points, or who delivers an ace when they're facing game point.
Precisely. The sources suggest that Alcaraz historically has a slight edge in converting those high leverage points.
Okay.
So Sinner might win 3 points in a row to get to 40 love, but Alcaraz might steal the next 5 points when the score hits deuce.
Oh, I see.
That point-for-point parity suggests that the average rally is perfectly contested, but the score itself is skewed by these tiny micro moments of sublime shot-making or mental tightness.
It speaks volumes about the razor-thin margin between them. And their 2025 season was defined by them constantly forcing those razor-thin margins. They met 6 times this year, and every single one of those matches was in an ATP-level final.
Everyone.
Rome, the French Open, Wimbledon, Cincinnati, the U.S. Open, and the ATP finals. That's a hyper-intensity only rivaled by the greats of the past.
6 finals in a single season is an historic benchmark. I mean, the only other pair of the Open era to face each other more often in finals were Ivan Lendl and John McEnroe back in 1984.
Wow, 84.
They met 7 times. So Sinner and Alcaraz are tracking the greatest, most defining rivalries the sport has ever seen, not just in quality, but in frequency and stakes.
It validates the view that they are currently operating in an orbit completely separate from the rest of the tour. And the crowning jewels of that intensity were the 3 consecutive Grand Slam finals, a truly unprecedented feat. That's where we need to dive in next. Let's talk about that unforgettable 2025 major trilogy.
This trilogy of major finals, Paris, London, and New York, was just a gift to tennis fans globally. It's genuinely the first time in the Open era that 2 players have met in 3 consecutive major finals.
Which guaranteed maximum anticipation and maximum consequence for nearly 5 months straight.
It really did.
Let's start at the beginning. Roland Garros, the French Open. This was the highly anticipated first major final showdown between them. It was hyped beyond measure, and unlike many sporting events, it actually exceeded the hype. The sources label it the enduring zenith of their rivalry, the match that truly transcended the sport.
It was a brutal test of endurance, of artistry, and of nerve. We're talking 5.5 dizzying hours of extraordinary drama.
5.5 hours.
And the context here is vital. The tennis world had been holding its breath, waiting for the successor to the Big Three era.
Right.
The era where Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic captured over 80% of major titles for 2 decades. This match felt like the symbolic coronation of the next dynasty.
And the level of play was so extraordinarily high that it moved even the most seasoned veteran. We have that quote from Novak Djokovic, don't we?
We do. He watched it and admitted he initially approached it from a tactical, sort of analytical point of view, but quickly moved into a phase of admiration, calling it an astronomical level of tennis.
When the man who has seen and achieved everything says that, you know you've witnessed something generational.
You certainly know it's an all-time classic. But the emotional and the narrative core of the match was the incredible collapse and comeback. The drama peaked late in the 5th set when Sinner set up 3 championship points on Alcaraz's serve.
3 of them.
3. The crowd noise was deafening. Everyone watching assumed Sinner had it locked up, ready to consolidate his burgeoning #1 status.
But Alcaraz completed an astonishing, just a gut-wrenching comeback from that position. And that comeback, as the analyst noted, was built on pure, unadulterated bravery.
This is the defining DNA of Alcaraz's game, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's the showman who favors the spectacular, the high-risk option over the safe, predictable play.
Right.
And while that willingness to play aggressively can sometimes frustrate his team and his fans, because he is prone to momentum swings and unforced errors when the risk doesn't pay off. At that exact moment, when the stakes were highest, it delivered a stunning climax.
But let's challenge that for a moment. Doesn't that high-risk style also introduce a fragility? I mean, if you're playing that aggressive when you're facing match point, you're gambling everything.
Yeah, well,
If Sinner had managed to hold on, we'd be talking about Alcaraz's recklessness, not his bravery.
that's absolutely true, and it highlights the brilliance of his coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, in managing that risk. The sources emphasize that Alcaraz's willingness to gamble is calculated. He knows Sinner is typically superior in those prolonged, rhythmic baseline rallies, the core shots we'll get into later. So, when the pressure mounts, Alcaraz has to change the geometry, he has to introduce the drop shot, or go for the huge inside-out forehand winner.
And the statistics prove that calculation worked in Paris.
They do. Across the match, Alcaraz hit 70 total winners to Sinner's 53, a difference of plus 17.
Which is a big gap.
But more tellingly, if we do dive into the decisive moments, specifically the last 4 games of sets 3, 4, and 5, Alcaraz produced 12 more winners than Sinner in those high-pressure situations.
Oh, more?
12. He hit 23 winners compared to Sinner's 11. He was pulling the trigger while Sinner was, perhaps, waiting for the error.
That is a phenomenal ability to step up rather than tighten up. He became only the 3rd player in the Open era to win a men's singles Grand Slam final after saving match points, joining Djokovic in 2019 and Gaudio in 2004. So if he joins that incredibly exclusive historic company, does that confirm that Alcaraz, like those champions, thrives specifically when the pressure is maximal?
It strongly suggests that.
That this unique ability to perform under duress is what separates him from the rest of the tour.
It confirms a specific, rare mental architecture, I think. He not only handles the pressure, he seems to require it to produce his best, most spectacular tennis.
He needs it.
It's like he's saying, you think you have me, watch this. It's an infectious, high-octane form of genius.
And despite Sinner being understandably devastated, he actually won more points in the match, didn't he?
He did. 193 points to Alcaraz's 192. Painfully close.
Just brutal. But the mutual respect afterward was clear. Alcaraz's message to Sinner summed up the beautiful competitive dynamic.
It is a privilege to share the court and be able to make history with you.
Acknowledging the opponent's role in your own greatness is a hallmark of truly epochal rivalries.
Absolutely. The fans recognized instantly that they weren't just watching a great match. They were watching the future of the sport being built, brick by dramatic brick.
So Paris goes to Alcaraz in a 5-set epic. That mental fortitude in Paris set up the perfect emotional storm for revenge just 35 days later at Wimbledon. And this was an incredibly significant final for the sport simply because it was the first Wimbledon final since 2002 not to feature Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, or Murray.
The torch wasn't just passed. The old guard had fully retreated from this particular stage.
For Sinner, this was the ultimate mental examination. The sources acknowledged that he had endured a difficult first part of the year.
A really difficult start.
And we have to mention, he had faced an unfortunate 3-month absence due to a temporary doping suspension following the Australian Open.
A period that required immense mental resolve just to get back to the top level.
And then you compound that with the fresh, crushing devastation of the Paris loss. This Wimbledon final was entirely about proving his resilience.
That context is crucial. I mean, having that much time away, especially right after winning a major and then coming back only to lose the biggest match of the year, that could break any player.
Oh, absolutely. This final wasn't just about the title. It was about Sinner conquering both the opponent and his own internal doubt.
And he delivered. The narrative was set for revenge, and Sinner executed perfectly. He went down a set, but then delivered a relentless, ruthless display of focused power.
A true serving masterclass while dominating the baseline. And what's interesting is that this match provided a rare glimpse into the chink in Alcaraz's armor. We heard him venting to his team.
Yes, the frustration was palpable. Alcaraz was caught mid-match telling his box, "From the back of the court, he is much better than me. Much better."
That's a massive admission from a top player.
Right.
Acknowledging that Sinner had truly stifled his ability to escape and create angles this time.
He was completely shut down.
The source material highlights exactly how clinical Sinner was using a specific analytical metric. He won an astonishing 92% of points when positioned in attack.
We need to unpack that. What does positioned in attack actually mean in analytical terms, and why is 92% so high?
So it's a key metric developed by tennis analysts that identifies when a player is successfully dictating play. Moving the opponent, pulling them off court, or forcing them onto the defensive.
Okay.
A player is positioned in attack when they have successfully gained a strategic advantage, often involving moving 3 feet or more inside the baseline, or forcing a short ball that lets them hit into an open court.
So Sinner wasn't just hitting hard, he was creating the opportunity to finish points decisively.
Absolutely. And a 92% conversion of those attacking opportunities is ruthlessly efficient.
Just clinical.
His clinical finishing, which sometimes dips against Alcaraz because of the Spaniard's incredible defense, was maintained at a level comparable to his tour average in this match. He did not allow Alcaraz's defense to turn into offense. He closed the door.
This was clearly a hugely significant victory for Sinner, both emotionally and career-wise. It was. Coach Darren Cahill was quoted saying, "He needed that win today. He knew the importance of closing this one out when he had the opportunity."
He had to prove it to himself.
It was Sinner conquering his mental demons from Paris. It was also huge because it was Sinner's first major title, not one on a hard court, demonstrating his adaptability and true all-court threat.
And it also snapped a run of 5 consecutive losses to Alcaraz, proving he could stop the bleeding.
A massive psychological boost.
That's the beauty of this rivalry. They trade blows, forcing each other to adapt and evolve in real time within the space of weeks.
Exactly.
And then, just 2 months later, we head to the final destination of this incredible trilogy, the U.S. Open in New York.
This is where we saw Alcaraz demonstrate his incredible ability to immediately problem solve and execute a strategic adjustment.
They became the first players in the Open era to meet in 3 consecutive major finals in the same season. The stakes couldn't have been higher.
No, they couldn't.
Alcaraz and Ferrero claim they quickly identified what needed correcting after the Wimbledon loss, though they kept the specifics close to their chest. But the results were undeniable.
The foundation of Alcaraz's success in New York was a subtle yet massive change in his serving patterns.
Okay.
He realized that while his serve had improved, Sinner was still able to anticipate and neutralize his primary serving areas, particularly on the hard courts.
So what did he change?
Alcaraz increased the use of the wide serve, especially on the deuce court, adding noticeable pace and managing to maneuver Sinner effectively out of position.
How difficult is it to make a subtle change to a core mechanic like the serve and have it pay off immediately in the pressure cooker of a Grand Slam final?
It's incredibly difficult. The serve is muscle memory. Any alteration to the toss, the rhythm, or the grip fundamentally destabilizes the most important shot in tennis. For Alcaraz to implement that subtle change under the guidance of Ferrero and have it hold up shows extreme mental discipline and confidence in his team's strategy.
They just saw a weakness and fixed it.
They identified Sinner's return position and decided they had to move him laterally more often. And it worked.
The U.S. Open data that we have is absolutely startling and confirms the success of that adjustment.
It truly is. Alcaraz won a remarkable 97% of his service games throughout the entire tournament.
97%. That's almost unheard of.
That level of efficiency is typically reserved for extreme specialists like a Pete Karlovic or Isner, not a versatile baseline player.
Right.
And in the final against Sinner, he won 83% of his first serve points while still hitting 41 winners. His serve had become an unshakable foundation for his aggressive baseline play.
He effectively dominated Sinner in Sinner's supposed favored environment, the hard court, by transforming the pace of the match.
Precisely. Former Wimbledon champion Marion Bartoli's reaction encapsulated the feelings of many experts. She said, "Alcaraz played at a level that not a single human being on the planet can reach at the moment. He is unplayable at this level."
That's perhaps the highest praise. It indicates that Alcaraz's ceiling, when his game components align, especially with that improved serve, is currently unmatched. Alcaraz won in 4 sets, which dethroned Sinner as the world #1 for the first time in 65 weeks. But Sinner, ever the student of the game, reflected on the defeat maturely.
He did. He acknowledged the core issue that led to the strategic arms race we're about to discuss. He said, "I was very predictable today on court. He changed up the game. Now it's going to be on me if I want to make changes or not."
That quote is brilliant because it's not an excuse, it's a declaration of intent to evolve.
Exactly.
He didn't blame his performance, he identified his strategy as the flaw.
Which brings us perfectly into part 2, the tactical arms race.
Because this isn't just about 2 great players hitting amazing shots, it's about 2 teams of analysts and coaches rapidly creating solutions to neutralize the opponent's strengths. It's a rapid, season-long evolution.
Exactly. Sinner committed to being less predictable and adding variety, specifically less reliance on his core power shots, which is what Alcaraz thrives on neutralizing.
And the key area for immediate foundational change was the serve, just as Alcaraz had done after Wimbledon. Following the U.S. Open, Sinner and his coach, Simone Vignazzi, immediately got to work. What exactly were the small but significant adjustments they made to his serve, motion, and rhythm?
The sources suggest the adjustments focused on consistency and disguise rather than purely brute force.
Okay.
Sinner's motion previously had a slightly longer kinetic chain and windup, which allowed opponents, especially a great returner like Alcaraz, milliseconds longer to anticipate the direction.
So he was giving it away.
A tiny bit. So Vignazzi tightened the platform stance, minimized the pre-contact movement, and focused on a flatter, faster rhythm.
That's fascinating. I mean, changing something that fundamental mid-season takes immense confidence in your team and your own ability to integrate complex mechanical changes under pressure.
It truly does, and Sinner's speed in integrating these changes is remarkable. He's noted for his rapid comprehension.
And the payoff was immediate and dramatic.
Completely. Sinner lost just 1 match for the rest of the 2025 campaign after that U.S. Open final defeat.
1 match?
He picked up 4 titles, including defending his ATP Finals title in Turin, which included a staggering run of 31 matches unbeaten indoors.
That is total, undisputed dominance indoors. It shows he took the painful lesson from New York, applied the fix, and returned with the tools required to maintain his edge, particularly on fast surfaces.
Absolutely.
But let's look closer at the fundamental differences in their games, the variety versus power paradox, because this is what perpetually fuels that 1651-point parity.
This boils down to the specialized analytical metrics developed to understand how players win. Let's start with Sinner's game, which is defined by flat, ruthless power.
Okay, tell us about the conversion score.
So the conversion score measures how clinical a player is. It calculates the percentage of points won after a player has gained a clear advantage in a rally.
So their ability to finish the job once they are in control.
Exactly. And Sinner leads the ATP Tour in this metric. He is statistically the most clinical finisher. His ball striking is so flat and powerful that when he gets his forehand or backhand in the right zone, the point ends quickly.
But as you mentioned earlier, the Alcaraz effect neutralizes that, right?
Completely. When Sinner plays Alcaraz, that conversion score, his superpower plummets by 13%.
13%? That's a huge drop.
It is. And it's because Sinner also leads the ATP Tour in the use of core shots, registering around 88% of his shots as baseline-to-baseline power exchanges.
And a core shot is just a strong, fast ground stroke.
Yes, designed to penetrate the opponent's baseline. Sinner plays with the least amount of variation of any top player on tour.
So he often doesn't need variety against anyone else, but Alcaraz demands it.
He absolutely demands it. Sinner's high-power predictability makes him vulnerable, which is where Alcaraz's steal score comes in.
Okay, we need to define that for the listener.
The steal score is fantastic. It measures a player's ability to turn a defensive position into an offensive one, essentially stealing the point back when they shouldn't.
Ah.
And Alcaraz leads the tour in this metric. He has an unparalleled ability to absorb extreme pressure, often while 4 or 5 feet behind the baseline.
Right, he's on the run.
And then instead of just blocking the ball back safely, he unleashes an acute angle, a huge topspin loop, or a sudden disguised drop shot.
So that's the moment. He's in a defensive scramble, the opponent thinks they've won the point, and then Alcaraz suddenly produces the angle that opens up the court entirely.
Flipping the rally from an 80% loss probability to an 80% win probability in one shot. That's the steal.
And his weaponry and inherent unpredictability, the mastery of drop shots, slices, and his willingness to charge the net are what truly unsettles Sinner.
It is. Alcaraz forces Sinner to deal with different types of balls, disrupting the precise, flat rhythm that Sinner relies on for his clinical baseline dominance.
Against other opponents, Sinner can count on his power to dominate. Against Alcaraz, he has to chase drop shots and deal with heavy slice, forcing him to play uncomfortable balls. And the sources show that Sinner is actively trying to inject that Alcaraz-like variety into his own game now.
We saw a distinct strategic change post-US Open. There's a fascinating data snapshot from the Vienna Open in October, where Sinner's use of variation shots, slices, drop shots, different spins, increased significantly to an Alcaraz-like 25.9%.
Wow. That is a substantial increase for a player known for his consistency. It shows a fundamental shift in strategy.
It is. He's actively embracing being less comfortable in order to force Alcaraz into the same unpredictable state.
It's a tactical arms race played out in front of millions, and it's why the fans are so captivated.
They know that every time these two meet, they aren't just watching a match, they are watching the frontier of tactical tennis evolution.
Now, let's quickly recap their overall 2025 seasons, because even with the tactical duels and the short suspension, the numbers of titles and wins are astronomical.
For Alcaraz, it was simply phenomenal. He secured the year-end world #1 ranking for the second time, confirmed at the ATP Finals. He amassed a staggering 71 wins, secured 8 titles from 11 finals, and suffered just 9 defeats all year.
9 defeats! Incredible!
And he added those 2 Grand Slams, taking his career total to 6 at the age of 22.
And Sinner's season arguably requires even more context, given that 3-month gap in competitive play.
It does. Despite the enforced break, he was still fighting for world #1 right up until the final event. He finished with 58 wins, 6 titles from 10 finals, and only 6 defeats.
Only 6 losses all year.
He also claimed 2 majors, the Australian Open and Wimbledon. And crucially, of the 12 total events he entered, he only failed to make the final on 2 occasions.
That consistency, that ability to immediately reach the business end of every tournament is truly extraordinary.
It is.
And what we must emphasize is that this high-stakes competition is fueled by genuine mutual respect. It's not a rivalry defined by animosity or personality clashes. It's defined by necessity.
Completely. Alcaraz's quote perfectly encapsulates this dynamic. He said, "When he plays such great tennis, it gives me motivation to go to the practice court, give 100%, try to be better. Sometimes he's annoying, but at the same time, he gives me extra motivation."
They understand that they are essential to each other's greatness. They are each other's ultimate test. So we have established the tactical nuance, the statistical parity, and the sheer dominance of Alcaraz and Sinner in 2025. This leads us inexorably to part 3, the gap.
Right.
Because when we talk about a duopoly, we must look at the immense chasm between them and the rest of the ATP Tour.
It is less of a gap and more of a total separation. The sources confirm the obvious, coming directly from their peers. Felix Auger-Aliassime put it bluntly. They are a level above everyone.
And the ranking points and statistics don't lie.
They don't.
When you look at career milestones since the start of 2020, the longevity of their high performance is highlighted. Only 3 players have claimed more than 20 ATP Tour level titles in that time frame. Alcaraz, Sinner, and Djokovic all sitting at 24 titles each. They are building historical resumes at an unprecedented collective pace.
But the real dominance is brutally apparent when we look at the ranking points. Sasha Zverev is the world number 3 player, a talented, powerful athlete, and a multiple slam finalist.
A great player in his own right.
But the point gap is staggering.
Tell us the exact breakdown again.
Zverev's point total leaves him closer to the world number 1,000 player, Enzo Coleman de Freitas, who has 5,144 points, than he is to Sinner, who is 6,340 points ahead of him.
Wow. That puts the separation into stark, undeniable relief. The quantitative difference between the top 2 and number 3 is almost equivalent to the difference between number 3 and a journeyman player scrambling through the challenger circuit.
It is. And this raises a crucial analytical question about the state of the tour and Zverev's ability to truly break through. While his talent is undeniable, the sources discuss the likelihood of him ever winning a Grand Slam due to what analysts refer to as scar tissue.
Let's unpack that loaded term, scar tissue. For listeners who don't follow Zverev's career religiously, what does that refer to?
It refers specifically to the lingering mental and emotional damage from past high-profile failures in major finals. The prime example is his collapse in the 2020 U.S. Open final against Dominic Thiem.
Right, I remember that.
Zverev led by 2-0 and ultimately lost in a devastating 5th-set tiebreak. He hasn't yet managed to truly exercise that failure, and subsequent losses in big matches reinforce that psychological barrier.
So even though he has the power and the physicality, the belief and the ability to close out a 7-match, 2-week major tournament against the very best might be compromised by those past defeats.
That is the analyst's conclusion. He is brilliant, but he hasn't demonstrated the mental architecture to withstand the final, concentrated pressure that Alcaraz or Sinner seem to thrive under.
And that is why the gap is so vast. It's not a talent gap, it's a mental and consistency gap. The duopoly simply turn up and win every single week. What about the established veteran who kept challenging them all year, Novak Djokovic?
Djokovic is, of course, the benchmark, and he is still chasing Grand Slam title number 25. He had a great 2025, reaching the semifinals in all 4 majors.
Still right there.
He showed he can still mix it physically with the top 2 on a given day, often taking a set or pushing them deep. But at 38, his schedule must and will continue to lighten.
So he's a threat to win a major, but not a threat to the overall ranking duopoly.
Precisely. The sources note that Djokovic has no real interest in chasing the rankings anymore. His focus is entirely on the majors and securing the final few records. A sustained ranking challenge to the top 2 is highly improbable, simply due to the sheer volume of tournaments Alcaraz and Sinner play and dominate.
So if the veterans are winding down and the established top 10 are struggling with consistency, who is the potential challenger? The sources pointed strongly to Jack Draper.
Draper is the great British hope, and he had a truly phenomenal 2025 season despite having his year curtailed by a left arm injury at the U.S. Open.
He was flying before that.
He won his first Masters title, reached another final, and climbed to a career-high world number 4. That is massive progress, proving he belongs in the elite conversation.
And he's one of the few players who has demonstrated he can disrupt the duopoly's rhythm. What makes him uniquely suited to challenging them?
Several factors. Firstly, his raw power is comparable. He's a big left-handed server, which immediately introduces a different angle of attack that they see less often.
That lefty serve is always tricky.
He generates massive pace off both wings. And secondly, his results against the top 2 were surprisingly good. He beat Alcaraz in the semifinals of Indian Wells for his second career win against the Spaniard, and he's level at 1-1 against Sinner.
So he's the one guy in the top 10 who can seemingly match their power and intensity on a given day, and his leftiness provides that tactical curveball.
That's the hope. He returns to action shortly at the UTS Grand Final with new coach Jamie Delgado, and all eyes will be on him to see if he can carry that momentum forward.
He represents the only realistic third party who has the weapons and the confidence to routinely threaten them.
For now, yes.
The sources also briefly mentioned other top 10 players: Auger Aliassime, Taylor Fritz, Alex de Minaur, Lorenzo Musetti, and other Masters 1000 winners like Ben Shelton, Casper Ruud, and Jakub Mensik. Why are these players still considered outside shots for major dominance?
It comes down to consistency over 2 weeks and the physical ceiling. While they can all win a Masters 1000 event on their best week, a single tournament success, they struggle to replicate that level for 7 consecutive 5-set matches against the intensity of the duopoly. They lack either the tactical variety, like Sinner used to, or the ability to absorb and redirect power, like Alcaraz. Ultimately, the consensus is that it would take a brave person to go outside of Alcaraz and Sinner for the major titles in 2026.
The technical, mental, and statistical gap is just too wide right now.
It is.
And let's close the 2025 season recap with the final status check on the world #1 race. Alcaraz finished the year as world #1, having regained the title at the Tour Finals, even though Sinner won the actual tournament in Turin.
The margin is minimal. Alcaraz leads by just 550 points.
550.
To put that in perspective, that's less than the 700-point difference between a Grand Slam winner and a runner-up.
So it's basically nothing.
The #1 spot is practically tied, setting up the most tense, high-stakes start to a season we've seen in years for 2026. Every point, every win in the Australian summer is going to matter immediately.
This rivalry is already making history. We've had 5-set thrillers, we've seen incredible tactical arms races, historic comebacks, and that staggering statistical parity, 1651 points won each. It is all combining to define a new, compelling era of men's tennis.
It truly is magnificent. The key theme running through all the sources is that the duopoly is here to stay, fueled by mutual admiration and competition, pushing each other to achieve feats that no one else on the planet can currently match.
And we saw the total lockdown in 2025. Every single tournament they both played, one of them won.
The other 98 players on the tour were fighting for bronze.
And what's incredible is that despite achieving all of this, the split majors, the world #1 battles, there's a profound sense that they're only just getting started.
Absolutely.
6 majors for Alcaraz, 4 for Sinner. What is the ultimate historical challenge that awaits them in 2026?
The ultimate challenge for both of them lies in the possibility of achieving the career Grand Slam simultaneously.
The career Grand Slam.
This is the feat of winning all 4 major titles at least once, a club achieved by only 8 men in history. And both Alcaraz and Sinner could potentially join that elite group by June 2026.
That is a colossal historical thought. What specifically do they each need to conquer next year to enter that pantheon?
For Alcaraz to complete the career Grand Slam, he needs to conquer the hard courts of Melbourne and win the Australian Open.
Okay.
For Sinner, who already has the Australian Open and Wimbledon, he needs to conquer the clay courts of Roland Garros, where Alcaraz defeated him in that epic final.
So if they manage that, if Alcaraz wins in Melbourne, Sinner wins in Paris, they will have simultaneously created one of the most exclusive and historic chapters in the history of the sport.
All while remaining separated by just a few hundred points at the top of the rankings. The beauty is that the tactical evolution is mandatory. Alcaraz must maintain his serving efficiency and variety to keep Sinner off balance. Sinner must continue to integrate variation shots and overcome his mental block on the biggest clay court stage. They are forcing each other towards perfection.
We've seen 5-set thrillers, serving masterclasses, tactical arms races, and historic comebacks. We've watched them trade the world #1 spot and split all the major titles. And yet there is a distinct, beautiful sense that this journey has only just begun.
It really does feel that way.
You absolutely need to follow the 2026 season live, because based on everything we've unpacked today, it's going to be astronomically good.
The level of tennis they demand from each other is unparalleled, and that continuous push for greater heights is exactly why the fans are the real winners in this extraordinary duopoly.